Throughout the build up to this fight, I kept hammering on my Twitter that what was going to be Jiri Prochazka's key to victory against Alex Pereira was 1. Taking a measured approach as opposed to his wild and reckless fighting style. 2. Being very cautious of and checking the leg kicks from Pereira. 3. Keep his guard high and tight at all times. I even got called a casual for this one. I'm not pissed. I'll wear that as a badge of honor, because if a casual could point this out and things ended up playing out that way, then I'd rather be a casual. But all that is beside the point. Now imagine my surprise when this fight starts and I begin to realize Jiri Prochazka clearly did not take that first knockout as a teachable moment, and this was what ultimately cost him in this fight and led to him suffering a second knockout from Alex Pereira. The only noticeable change Jiri Prochazka made this time around was switching between conventional and southpaw stances as a response to Alex chopping his lead left leg off the first time. And that didn't even really help matters, because it was evident Pereira had probably game planned for this too and was still punishing him in the southpaw stance. However, other than this one adjustment, it was the same Prochazka that we saw in the first fight that we got here too. And like I said, as long as things didn't change from Prochazka and he still stuck with fighting recklessly, the result weren't also going to change. Prochazka, even though he tried to be a bit measured, was still as reckless as ever. Case in point, let's take a look at one of the biggest moments in the fight, the knockdown at the end of round 1. Here you can see Jiri Prochazka blitzing into Alex Pereira with a left-handed jab while leaving himself completely exposed on the other side. The crazy part is he does this twice in that sequence. The first time he backs Alex up, even though he doesn't really connect, and then decides to keep the pressure on, but look how exposed he is. And this time around, Alex had made the read and saw that opening, so instead of backing up, he just slips the jab, plants his feet, and lands that short left hook that sends Jiri to the ground. And as far as I choose to be concerned, the fight ended at that point. I mean, the greatest lesson to be learned from the first fight was definitely to always have you guard high at all times, and it is very clear that Jiri didn't learn this lesson. And it's crazy to think that this wasn't the first time in the fight where Jiri blitzed into Alex with a jab while leaving himself completely exposed on his power side. Earlier in the fight, he had done the same thing and suffered the same consequence. As you can see here, Jiri lunges into Pereira with a jab, exposing himself on the right. The jab doesn't land, and he goes for it again, and this time Pereira responds with a perfectly placed left hook, which could have easily ended the fight. Actually wobbles him a bit, but he is quick to recover and get his poker face back on. And for a fighter of Jiri's caliber, I would have expected him to have realized that he was giving Pereira this openings and make the necessary adjustment. But no, this guy didn't learn from the first fight. Didn't also make reads and adjust in the second. Watching Jiri in this fight just reminded me of the popular saying, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. He does this again at this point of the fight, blitzing into Alex with his guard hand down, first attempt, second attempt. Luckily for him, when Alex tries to counter, there is enough distance between them for him to slip Alex's hook. Even when they were hand fighting, Jiri still didn't show defensive awareness. As you can see, his hands were way down there, one the other side, unlike Pereira. Interestingly, at this point in the fight, Jiri puts his guard up really high on the right, and shortly after that, Pereira attempts to land the left hook, and he's unsuccessful because of Jiri's guard. And I was expecting this to be a wake-up call to Jiri that his guard needed to stay up, but no. That turned out to be the only time in the fight where Jiri intentionally raised his guard, because right after that exchange, this is Jiri standing in front of Pereira with his guard down, and this is practically what we get for the rest of the round. To his credit, though, Jiri was more cautious of the leg kicks this time around. I'm not saying he handled them perfectly, but I feel like he fared better than he did in the first fight. Of course, there is the fact that Pereira didn't throw a whole lot of kicks out there, but of the ones he threw, Jiri was aware enough to slip some of them, like here and here too. On one occasion, even though he didn't land, he attempted to counter Pereira throwing a kick with a punch. And like most of you probably know, this is one of the best ways to deal with kicks. Ironically, in this fight, it felt as though the only person who took anything away from the first fight was Alex Pereira. I mean, one would expect that the loser of the first fight would be the one to learn from the fight the most, but it turned out it was Alex Pereira who took learning from that first fight serious of the two. In the first fight, Jiri found success and made Pereira uncomfortable whenever he blitzed in throwing long and extended combos. This time around, however, Alex Pereira was well prepared for him and slipped majority of the offerings from Prochazka, evidence that he actually learned from the first fight and made necessary adjustment. The first fight was his first time experiencing the awkward angles from which Prochazka throws his punches, but by the second fight, he had figured him out. Also, seeing how Jiri found success after he took him down in the first fight, this time Pereira was very aware, and every time Jiri ducked down to level change, Pereira met him with a jab to the body that would then impede Jiri from proceeding with that offense. He clearly figured that out from the first fight and made the required adjustment. Also, unlike the first fight where Pereira only defended Jiri's takedown attempts by threatening a guillotine that he wasn't fully committing to, just using as a defensive move, this time around you see Pereira actually hand fighting and assuming proper defensive posture and working his way out of Prochazka clinch. Once again, this fight only just reminded me of the saying, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. In conclusion, I just believe Jiri didn't really learn anything from that first fight, and he ended up wasting his second shot at Alex Pereira because of that. Thanks for watching all. Please comment on the video, like the video, and subscribe to the channel.